This is In-Ear Insights, the Trust Insights podcast. AI Academy for Marketers is an online education platform designed to help marketers like you understand, pilot, and scale artificial intelligence. The AI Academy features deep dive certification courses of 3 to 5 hours, along with dozens of short courses, 30 to 60 minutes each, taught by leading AI and marketing experts. Join Katie Robert, CEO of Trust Insights, and me, Christopher Penn, Chief Data Scientist of Trust Insights, for 3 of our courses in the Academy: 5 use cases of AI for content marketing, intelligent attribution modeling for marketing, and detecting and mitigating bias in marketing AI. The Academy is designed for manager-level and above marketers and largely caters to non-technical audiences, meaning you don't need a programming background or a background in data science to understand and apply what you learn. One registration gives you unlimited access to all the courses, an invitation to a members-only Slack instance, and access to new courses every quarter. Join now and save $100 off registration when you go to trustinsights.ai/AI Academy and use registration code PEN100 today. That's trustinsights.ai/AI Academy and use registration code PEN100 today. In this week's In-Ear Insights, we're going to start off with something totally different, a short poetry reading. The Rhyme of the Ancient Google. Google has gone to God. You cannot conceive it or guess it, for all of a sudden it has happened. Come, come, whoever you are, oh, come now, hasten, hasten. So you may be saying, what in the world is going on? What has happened to the data-focused podcast that we all love? Over the weekend, researchers at OpenAI have published the results of the newest language model they've been using called GPT-3. Was the original one a couple of years ago. GPT-2 was last year, which is something that a lot of folks, including Trust Insights, have used to generate credibly sounding natural language by machine. And GPT-3 has come out, and for all of the research and data published so far, is a substantial leap forward in terms of what computers can do to generate language. Here's another example. This is the poem Future Consensus Forecasts by the Board of Governors of the Federal Reserve System. No one knows what will come. Forecasts foretell a rise in power. That is probably not to be. Deficit of several lines. The golden future has tourniquets. No one likes it. Initially, I love the expression. I love the expression on your face, Katie. But more practically, this is a tool that, given a prompt, is able to generate more credible sounding data in natural language. And so this follows on to a question that we were asked last week on Joseph Jaffe's show by Bob Farnham, saying, when something brand shiny new comes out, how do you evaluate it? How do you fit it into your strategy? And how do you know whether it's worth paying attention to or just another shiny object for the squirrel to chase after, for the brain squirrels to go after? So when you think about a new technology, and obviously, Katie, you've had to deal with me for more than 5 years now on this front. How do you differentiate between like the technology being shiny and new and chasing after it, and okay, well, where does this fit in?
Well, first, let me take a step back and say I was always terrible at deciphering poetry in high school in my English classes when that was like what we were working on. I was terrible at it. So it's all abstract nonsense words shoved together for me. So everything you just said, I definitely had like the Macarena playing in my head while you were saying it, because I was like, I don't get any of this. So that being said, when the first thing that I look for when new software or a new version or something comes out, and this might be the product manager in me, is I'm looking for release notes. What's new? And so if I can't easily see what's new in a new version, like there should be some sort of a bulleted list, like what's new, fixed, the widget bug, changed from blue to green, like whatever the thing is. And also in this case, because it's more complicated machine learning with natural language processing, I need to have an understanding at a glance of what does it do now that it didn't do before? Why do I need this version versus the old version? So that's one piece of it. The other piece of it, and Chris, this is something that I always ask you, is for the sake of the business, for our business, for our clients, do they need whatever the shiny object thing is saying that it's going to do? Give me a use case. Show me where we need to spend our time figuring out how this thing works. Because I think the challenge with software is that there's so much of it and it updates so quickly and it's constantly changing. I think the thing that marketers and companies need to ask themselves is, what's the problem that this thing is solving? And do I need it? Or is it just like cool and exciting and I want to play with it? If the latter, do it on your own time. If the former, let's figure out what problems that we currently have that this thing will solve and then spend your time exploring it.
Yep. Yeah, this is still, from a technology perspective, it is still early. It is still, the actual model itself is not publicly available yet. It is researchers who are granted access to the private beta are publishing their findings now, but it is not generally available. And I'm hopeful that in the next year or so, it will become available to the general public in ways that we can use it. To your point about the release notes, it's interesting because when a new model is released that does something substantially different, it's kind of like the original was a bicycle, version 2 was a car, and now there's an airplane sitting in your driveway. And so it's not necessarily a release note so much as there's a brand new thing that does something different that ostensibly still achieves the overall goal of transportation, but instead of it being a car you drive, it's a plane you fly. And so there's obviously a bit more of a learning curve to using it. Where I think it's really important, and like you said, is understanding, what does the thing do? Like, it's like if somebody puts a new appliance in your kitchen, can you broadly tell, like, does it fry things? Does it bake things? Does it blend things? Like, what exactly is the thing? And if it's not clear, then perhaps the UI needs a bit of work. With this model, the thing that fascinated me most of all, that I think has potential incredible both benefits and hazards for our industry, is something called neural style transfer. So, Katie, if I took your blog posts or our conversations and I fed them into the model as priming, as training data, and then I took Harry Potter and I said, I want you to rewrite Harry Potter in the way that Katie Robert speaks and writes, it will rewrite Harry Potter as if you had written it, as opposed to the way that the original author had written it. When you think about that drastically changes how we think about content. Because what is content at that point? Content is the idea then that is created in a certain way. But if you were to use this technology, it would be indistinguishable theoretically from your writing, but it would also be unique. It would be something that would not be a copyright violation per se, but a derivative work. And so there are massive implications for content marketers. If you were to take, for example, a paper that McKinsey published, and you were to do a neural style transfer on that, you could create a McKinsey paper that was factually as correct, but in your own words.
It's an interesting dilemma in the sense of, if we go back to the question of, do you need this thing? So for organizations that are churning out large volumes of content, it sounds like perhaps it might be a worthwhile investment. When we speak about and talk about and teach about artificial intelligence, one of the segments of the talks is always build or buy. Well, how do I know if this is the right investment for me? And so, you're talking about hardcore machine learning, natural language processing. Let's say we're talking about something that's a little bit more straightforward, like a social listening platform, for example. Choose any one of the dozens that are out there. If you're evaluating whether or not you need this thing, you need to first know, do I have someone on my team who can use the thing? Do I just want to pay a third-party company to do the thing for me? And do we have the money either way? And I think that those are some of the questions, because what you're describing with the natural language processing and having it write in my style so that I never have to sit at my keyboard again looking at a blank page sounds really enticing. But do we have someone on our team who can first figure out the model ingest all of the, learning information, content, and then test it and then maintain it and then, do everything with it. So do we have that resource? Do we have the time to do that, to do the R&D, and do we have the money? Because perhaps it's an open source model, but you still have to pay someone to do the thing.
Yeah, I would say of people, process, and platform, I think your biggest limitation for something like this, for any new technology, really is the people and their skills, because that is either the limiter or the enabler that you have to leap forward on something. If you don't have the skills in house, it doesn't really matter what the technology is. You cannot use it. It's like, again, if you cannot fly a plane, putting a plane in your driveway looks cool, and you can be proud that you own a plane now, but you still can't go anywhere with it because you can't fly.
I will say, though, if you're keeping your plane in your driveway, you clearly are doing it wrong, and you probably shouldn't own a plane in the first place.
Yeah, it depends. If you live in the Alaskan bush, then you actually do, because there's no roads. But
sure, let's go with that one.
But so I think the other thing that we have to keep our minds open about, that is hinted at in Bob's question, is, does this have the potential to have a transformative effect as opposed to an iterative effect on our business? Meaning, does this open up new revenue lines? Does this open up brand new capabilities that not only do we not have, but the industry as a whole does not have? Something that our old buddy and friend Todd Jeffrin used to say is, there's three things you can do that are newsworthy. First, best, only. You can do the first of something, the best of something, or the only one that does something. And if you have a technology like this and you have the people and the processes in place, you could achieve all three very, very quickly. And as we all know from other machine learning and AI projects, there is a substantial advantage to you if you are first mover, because the sooner you get going, the sooner you're collecting data that you can use, and the more of a disadvantage competitors are at, because they have to not only catch up on the technology, they have to catch up on the data collection as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, and so, it's tricky, because part of my brain is like, yeah, absolutely, that makes sense. But the other part of my brain is, what is the likelihood that a marketing team has a skilled data scientist on their staff in order to be experimenting with these new models that, to your point, Chris, aren't even fully available to the public yet, are still in their testing phase, in order to be first out of the gate with something? That's a unique position for a team to be in. And so it's, I sort of struggle with, having the conversation about these, natural language processing models, when I know that a lot of teams are still struggling with some of the basics.
I mean, when you deal with a situation like that, like you were saying earlier, it goes back to build or buy, right? If you cannot build, you have to buy, right? There simply is no alternative, and that may mean buying an agency like Trust Insights to say, like, hey, we need to engage you as a client to offer this capability, because we simply cannot do it. It's just not in the cards, and there's not going to be a budget to do that. So for those folks who are on the agency side, the challenge then is, are you willing to make a big enough bet in your own agency to create this capability that you can then sell and potentially offer as a substantial multiplier to your clients? Something that, again, first, best, only. If you cannot find this capability anywhere else, and it's valuable, and it's worth paying for, do you take that bet?
So it goes. So this is sort of all circling around the question of, how do you evaluate something that's brand new, to the market, to the industry, as to whether or not it's a shiny object or something of value to you? Because for every 10 people that call something a shiny object, one person is going to say, but I need that. And so the question is really coming down to, how do you evaluate I need that versus that shiny object? And so, Chris, a lot of what you're talking about is really evaluating, especially if it's a brand new technology, like, what are your business models? What do your clients or customers need? Is there something like this already in the industry? that would make it a worthwhile investment to you to be first out of the gate? Does it solve an existing problem, or are you looking for a problem to solve with this solution? And can you make the investment? So those are not small questions for someone to ask their company and their team when evaluating something like this.
It reminds me a lot, actually, of a clinical trial, right? Phase 1, does it cause harm? Phase 2, does it do anything? And phase 3, does it do better than the existing standard of care? And I think that's not a bad framework for looking at a piece of technology, right? Is it something that's going to actively cause harm to our systems? Does it work at all? Like, is it hype and vaporware, or is there a there? And then 3, if there's a there, is it better than what we can currently offer? Because to your point, GPT-3 and its cousins in this language transformer family requires a massive investment in technology and in brain power and skills. This is not a piece of software like Microsoft Word that you just download off the internet and put on your computer. This is and it's like literally the engine of a car. Like it doesn't come with the rest of the car. You have to build the rest of the car. But you've got a bigger, faster engine. And so that phase 3 is, it may turn out that for your company, it's not better than the existing standard because you can't use it well. I mean, when in the pharma world, how do they decide what drugs to invest in? Like, knowing that something's going to be a big bet or a potential dud, and looking at the clinical trials process.
I mean, that's a heavy question for a Monday morning. So a clinical trial, depending on the type of trial. So I worked primarily in the SBIR world, so Small Business Innovative Research. And so those trials, the phase 1 was 6 months, the phase 2 was 18 to 24 months, and phase 3 was commercialization. So that right there, you're already talking about a 3-year commitment to testing this thing. And that's for, software. When you're talking about pharmaceutical drugs, you're talking about a longer, typically a multi-year thing. When we're talking about software that may or may not intervene with, people's, medical decisions, that kind of a thing, it's a little less of a time investment, but you should be treating it just as seriously because this is your business. And so the first thing that you should really be thinking about, Chris, to your point, is that testing, that proof of concept. And so the way that I would approach that is, the first thing I would do is run numbers. I would find the data, both financial and otherwise, because what I would want to know is, if we take the example, this natural language processing software is going to start to write blogs for me in my voice, in my style. Okay. First and foremost, how long does it take me typically to write a blog, and what's my hourly rate? So that's one piece of data. How many blogs do I write per week, per month, per year? That's my second piece of data. What kind of, return on investment do I get from these blog posts that I put out there? That's my third piece of data. So I now have 3 hard data points to compare against my investment in this natural language processing software, where I need to know, what is it going to cost me to set it up? What is it going to cost me to train it? And how long is it going to take before I can replace my own physical writing with the machine doing my writing? And then how much time do I then, as the human, need to spend editing and publishing this content? And so there's a lot of different variables that I would want to explore. And that would help me, at least in this specific example, understand, is it worth the investment to go down this road? And so perhaps the software can do it better than I can, but it may not be cost effective. So it may not be a better option for me.
Yep. So that fits it may not exceed the existing standard because the existing standard is the right balance of efficiency and effectiveness.
Right.
Okay. So if you'd like to chat about the model itself and things like that, and it's of interest to you, pop on over to our free Slack group, trustinsights.ai/analytics for marketers. This will be a topic of discussion. I'm sure that will come up multiple times over the next year. So as tools like this or models like this have tools built around them, it is going to be fascinating, and it is absolutely a great water cooler for your other ordinary, regular, non-crazy, far out there analytics questions as well. So we have over 1,200 folks who are enjoying the occasional conversation on marketing analytics. And if you have follow-up questions on this episode, please drop a comment over in wherever it is that you're consuming this, or over on our website, trustinsights.ai, and we will talk to you soon. Want help solving your company's data, analytics, and digital marketing problems? Visit trustinsights.ai today and let us know how we can help you.